22nd day of May in the year 2022. It seems we are awash in twos this day. But I welcome you and bid you come now to hear this reading from the scripture, this according to John's Gospel, chapter 5, verses 1 through 9. After this, there was a festival of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now in Jerusalem by the sheep gate there is a pool, called in Hebrew Bethzatha, which has 5 porticos. In these lay many invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I am making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me." Jesus said to him, "Stand up, take your mat, and walk." At once the man was made well, and he took up his mat and began to walk. Now that day was a Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So reads the text of the 4th commandment. I must say, it sounds categorically imperative that we obey it. Its tone alone is definitive, universal, and admits no exceptions. And then we read John's account of Jesus' observance of the Sabbath during a time of festival for the Jews. Moreover, Jesus keeps the Sabbath in the holy city, the city of David, the city regarded by 3 of the world's great religions, even in our own day, as the one most hallowed of all, Jerusalem. It is highly unlikely that any act Jesus may undertake in so obvious a context will be unnoticed. Indeed, Jesus is no dunce and will certainly understand that anything he does that contravenes or contradicts the strictest orthodoxy will stimulate controversy and a swift rebuke, at the very least. Now, if you know that, and if I know that, and all of us do, we must conclude that what Jesus does in the present episode is intentional. Jesus goes out of his way to deliberately upend the sacred commandment to rest on the Sabbath day. But why? Keep in mind that the 10 Commandments were given to Moses to give to the people of Israel as a solemn charge and covenant. They are not, as my students are often want to say, guidelines or provisional rules to manage conduct, general principles through which to measure appropriate behaviors. That is to say, the 10 Commandments are not optional, nor are they negotiable. However much my students would love to be able to think they can pick them up and lay them down. That is why they are called commandments, after all, in the first place, that you need to be observant. Righteous Jews saw them that way. One could not pretend to dispose of them on a whim or at one's pleasure. But here we have Jesus visiting the pool of Bethesda, which means the house of mercy. He knows that the pool with its 5 porches is fitted so that, as the King James Version translates it, the great multitude of impotent folk, of blind, halt, and withered, close quote, may await the troubling of the water to secure a healing, provided he that is quickest may outdo all the others to reach the waters first. On that condition alone was it believed that one might be healed. So Jesus has surveyed this luckless throng of afflicted folks, and one in particular catches his eye as most in need of being first rather than last. I can't help but believe that Jesus found the healthcare system established to treat the many maladies the people endured more than a little offensive, ineffective, unfair, and uncertain. No one could know when the angel, according to the legend, might stir up the waters of the pool. So they waited. And closely inspected the waters for any sign of movement before leaping, jumping, hobbling, or lurching into the bubbling pool. Jesus, as always, has a discerning spirit. He sees the struggles of the man in question, a man, John assures us, who has been alone in his wretched condition for 38 miserable years. Ancient estimates record that 38 years was just shy of the average lifespan of even a healthy man in that day. So what we know about this one man is that he had never known a day in his life when he did not contend with illness. But here he is, beside the pool, just the same. How he arrived there, we do not know. For he tells Jesus that no one is there to help him to be lowered into the pool. How he secures his daily bread and his lodging, or how he attends his nightly ablutions. None of these particulars are shared in John's account. But here he is, lying on his mat beside the pool, in the one hope he has nursed for 38 long years, that he might be well. He shows up day after day, month after month, and year after disappointing year to look longingly upon the surface of that water for some trace, some sign, some extraordinary cue or clue that the end of his troubles draw nigh. Peering into the water's unperturbed and glassy skin, he espies the reflection of a man who has stopped to study him. The man does not ask his name, does not inquire what he is doing there, but he does ask all the same if the invalid wants to be made well. Today, on the Sabbath, we know, and so does Jesus, that the poor fellow wants to be healed. That is why he is there, after all, hoping against hope that this might be the day of all days when heaven will notice him. But Jesus puts the question so that others may hear and understand what Jesus is about to dare. Jesus is thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead, he always is. But the invalid is riveted in the here and now, nailed to the side of the pool by his paralysis and his pain. Jesus' question, it seems to him, requires some explanation for why he has suffered so long if he is so easily positioned by the pool's rounded edge. A simple twitch and a roll of the body would do the trick to get him in. But here he is, lying there like some beached fish, his belly up and his gills full of dry air. So he tells Jesus he has no one to assist him, no relation, no friend or kindly neighbor to lift him in. His illness has detached him from all associations. He has no club. He has no church, no synagogue, no temple, no family, no kith, nor kin. When he begins to move at all, he is too slow to make the splash before others have soaked themselves and nearly drowned. The cruelest cut of all, it would appear, is that to lay hold of his cure, he must already be cured. Now, 2 things I urge upon you. 2 things. Please, won't you see? First, the invalid is fixed on the water of the pool for the lone possibility of his healing. He can imagine no other remedy but the water, and that multitude assembled at the pool is confirmation of his conviction. They too believe it to be so. Second, he is there on the Sabbath. And if the agency of his healing should arrive that day, it is sure this unfortunate soul has no qualms at all about what the law demands. How many Sabbaths has he seen in all his 38 years? I did the math. And it comes to 1,824 Sabbaths. This poor devil has suffered his incapacitation. He cannot jump. He cannot run. He cannot dance, and he cannot shout to praise and glorify the God who made the heavens and the earth. If there is to be no work on the Sabbath, may it at least be permitted to God's people to praise God with all their strength and with all their might, with all the wellspring of their joy and their delight. So Jesus does the only sensible thing under the circumstances, at least as far as I'm concerned. He ignores the pool and its legend of angels troubling the water. He also subverts the law that commands that healing others on the Sabbath is work forbidden on that day. On two counts, Jesus seems to say, never mind them both, for I have the power greater than water, even if this pond should become a whirlpool, and I have the authority to suspend the law because I am the law that matters above every law. By what authority is it that Jesus then may heal that man on the Sabbath? Tend ye therefore to the summary of all the law. The summary is Jesus has handed it down to all of us. You are to love God with all your heart, and with all your might, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. And the second is like unto it, you shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. Jesus knows what it means to love. And if the law should prevent someone's act of love to heal a neighbor, then the law has run amok. And that, friends, is no law at all. But then, you might say it is one thing for Jesus to break the law, but he makes the invalid a co-conspirator to break the law again. When Jesus instructs the man to pick up his bed and walk, that feeble-boned invalid did just that. In the blink of an eye, he carried his bed without assistance, I might add. He walked along the silent pool's glistening waters, dipped his foot over the edge and kicked his toe to send small droplets flying through the air. He grinned at his own surprise that his bones did not ache. His muscles grew taut, and his back became straight. Look at me, look at me, look at me, he said to all and sundry. Slack-jawed, they all beheld him parading and holding his bed above his head, high-stepping as he went from one porch to the next with a, hey, hey, how do you do? And a bless my soul, I think I can run a race if anyone should care to set the pace. When the leaders of the temple told him he had no right to walk and carry his bed, they called it work and preferred him to beg. But if it should please God to heal you on a Sabbath, then it will please God to receive your praise in the selfsame day. Here is a blessed holy work indeed, to sing out loud and praise my God, to worship God and to sing out loud. I hear Jesus above the din of the crowd. The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. So says Mark. The invalid walked not because he saw the water, because faith does not come by sight. At least if we're to believe 2 Corinthians. He walked when he heard Jesus say, pick up your bed and walk, because faith comes by what is heard, and what is heard comes through the word of Christ. So says Romans. Does it trouble you to labor when love calls, if labor is forbidden through the law? If you believe that and you say yes, then maybe you are afflicted. But I hear Jesus. I pray you do too. Listen, do you want to be made well?